And it was really funny because Bono went and bought a hearse in Dublin. It was just a cheap kind of hearse. And we all followed it up. There was a kind of cavalcade of people coming up for doing the video. And I remember at the time there was the border in Auchtercloy. Before we got to the border, the hearse stopped. And I saw Bono getting out and getting into the back of the hearse and lying down with his hands like this, you know. When you're going through the checkpoint, you know, they take each car in individually. Of course, the hearse went through and you could see the army guys looking in, you know, and the next thing Bono moved and you could see them jumping back to what's going on. And then they discovered, you know, who it was and they were taking pictures and whatever.
Welcome to the XS Noize Podcast, the chart-topping music interview show. I'm your host, Mark Millar. If you missed our last episode, I spoke with Glenn Matlock, the original bassist and founding member of the Sex Pistols, so check it out. In this episode, I'm joined by a true icon of Irish music, Moya Brennan from Clannad. Her voice, ethereal, timeless and unmistakably Irish, has carried the spirit of our culture around the world for over 5 decades. This year marks the 40th anniversary of Macalla, the landmark album that saw Clannad blend their haunting traditional sound with modern textures, and create one of their most celebrated songs, InALifetime, featuring Bono. In this episode, Moya reflects on the making of Macalla, the band's creative evolution, her spiritual roots, and the lasting legacy of Clannad's music. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Moya Brennan, the voice of Clannad, here on the XS Noize Podcast. Hi Moya, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark. Nice to be here with you.
It's great to have you. It's a real honour. Clannad's album Macalla turns 40 this year, so congratulations on such a timeless record.
Well, it is that. I think, you know, because of we're listening to it a bit more, you kind of get the idea. It's well produced, and we kind of went all out to kind of do this, you know, nice record, and it kind of, you threw everything at it, and it really, I'm very, very proud of it. It's really good.
Well, 40 years on, when you listen back to Macalla, what hits you first? The memories, the sound, or the feeling of where that music has taken you?
I think it was great to see the progress from where we kind of started. I mean, 40 years, you know yourself, you kind of can't believe when somebody said to me 40 years, it's really, is it that long? But it's what's nice about it is you can see the progress of like the 6 albums that we did with mainly Gaelic songs and, you know, local songs and trad songs and that. Very little writing until we did Magical Ring. And then, you know, we did Legend, which was the Robin of Sherwood music, which was great and a great experience because when you're from Donegal, like, you know, I'm surrounded here by trees and bushes and the seas down there. And you know what I mean? It's lovely to have the opportunity to put music to kind of panoramic views and just, you know, that nature kind of feel, because that's really where our sound came from. So doing Legend was really a great progression of bringing us on with doing, you know, stuff with pictures. And then when Macalla came along, it's, you know, it's lovely because you hear like that kind of sound but progressed a bit more in like Clannad. And it's nice also the fact that, you know, we still had a trad song in there. We couldn't get away with not doing something like that. And so, you know, Bochel an Arne, which is a song from this area and a song I grew up with and would have sung at school. But, you know, the rest of it is just like, you know, Paul and Kieran, they really got into writing great music, great songs. And it was just, you know, a really great progression. And I loved singing the songs. There's some songs in there that, I loved the Wild Cry and Almost Seems Too Late to Turn. And of course, Closer to Your Heart, even though it was very much outside the realm of Clannad, kind of to go that sort of poppy kind of vibe. It was nice to do that. And it's very much, a song that when we're doing, concerts and that's one of the songs that everybody wants to hear. It's just, it's great in that way that the audience came kind of with us. But you have to remember where Clannad really came from, as far as growing up, listening to my father, rehearsing the show bands in the kind of the front room, or, the music that he was getting from Derry, the sheet music, whether it was Buddy Holly and, Nat King Cole, and, you're talking about like really old sheet music, right up to Elvis Presley kind of thing. And so we kind of grew up, speaking in Irish, and that kind of also in our background, in our root. So I think it was inevitable that we allowed, when Macalla happened, to let it progress to what we felt natural. You know what I mean? That was already kind of there, if that makes sense to you. When people did hear the likes of Closer to Your Heart, and they kind of, went, what are they up to? They're trying to become, changing their mood. No, if you knew the background of Clannad, we had the Gaelic, we had the trad songs and everything, but there was another side to us that was on my father's side. So in that way, we allowed that to come in as part of our kind of, being, And then Kieran wrote beautiful chord structure and everything to what turned out to be InALifetime. And what a treat. I mean, we started recording this in a place in Switzerland. Paul was living in Switzerland at the time, Power Play. And so we started it there. Then we went to a studio called Ridge Farm in the south of England. But we ended up finishing in Dublin in Windmill Lane studio. And, Windmill Lane, where it is and situated in Dublin, is down by the quays. That's where U2's offices are. And, we knew them anyway because, even now, a lot of musicians. But then there was kind of, everybody knew everybody because I suppose maybe there was less, around. So we used to there's a pub there that we used to go in because our office was around the corner as well. Windmill was there. U2 was down the road. And you just kind of, I think it was one evening in the pub, we were talking about this track that we had. And before we knew it, Bono was in sort of having a look at what it was. And it was lovely that he was interested, because, then he didn't sing with many people. I think it's the first kind of duet he ever did. So that was a privilege. But he came in and his take, on the backing track that we had laid down was amazing. I mean, he's so open anyway, and he's not afraid to go in there and kind of try everything, So we had great fun. And, the first day we were just messing around with what could be or whatever. And then we all went home that night. And there was this, I mean, I've seen thunder and lightning in Ireland before, but that night there was this magnificent thunder and lightning in the sky. And everybody came in with words the next day with, thunder, lightning, rain, storms, and the song was born and it was great. Yeah. So it was kind of quite natural in a way. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of suits us. And most of the songs are very much that kind of way. Predigan Old then wrote a great song called Journey's End, which is a real, come on, let's go and, it's great. I mean, very much Clannad's in Macalla, but it's a progression of where we came from, but very much what we had, the background that we grew up with is, I think really, really, it's, it is still one of my favorite albums for sure.
Yeah, let's dig into some of those songs. I mean, we were talking about InALifetime. It's one of those songs that seems to exist outside of time.
Yeah.
And you were talking about The Stormy Night. The Stormy Night that sort of reshaped the song. What changed when you come back into the studio?
No, it nothing. It was the words that came in the next day. The song was kind of already there. Bono had tried a couple of things. He came in the next day, tried more things, and then I sang kind of my part with help of Paul, and we're just finding and weaving our voices together. It wasn't kind of sitting there going through hours and hours of tapes of, you know what I mean, try this, try that. It was kind of very much, it kind of happened, you know what I mean, which is really nice. Bono just came in and did his stuff and he was gone. You know what I mean? It was great. And then we all came up to Donegal to do the video, with one machines and rain machines. Can you imagine coming to Donegal with wind and rain machines?
Yeah, the video was in Ecuador. And the video, it has a dream like 1930s feel. What was it like returning there to shoot the video?
It was great fun. It was great fun because they had a audition for, loads of people turned up for, we wanted a gang of people. We wanted two kind of elderly people, and I knew them well, Nelly Mulligan and Kitty. And it was, it was lovely to see them there because I grew up watching them and the Arclangador and in the theatre, the Irish theatre here, with dramas and pantomimes and everything, Then all these young kids and all the different people that came to audition to sort of wander along behind the hearse. It was amazing. And it was really funny because Bono went and bought a hearse in Dublin. It was just a cheap kind of hearse. And we all followed it up. There was a kind of cavalcade of people coming up for doing the video. And I remember at the time there was the border in Auchnacoy. And before we got to the border, the hearse stopped. And I think I was right behind the hearse. And I saw Bono getting out and getting into the back of the hearse and lying down with his hands like this, So when when you're going through the checkpoint, they take each car in individually. And of course, the hearse went through and you could see the army guys looking in, and the next thing Bono moved. And you could see them jumping back to what's going on. And then they discovered, who it was and they were taking pictures and whatever. It was just so funny. But yeah, he bought a hearse, bought it up. And it's just about, in our lifetime, like, really talking about the trials of life, from young to old and just that kind of, feeling. And that's really what came across in the video as well, I think. I think it's a lovely video. Mert Avis did a lot with the boys, the U2 boys, and he was pulled in to do this, and he did an amazing job. It is amazing that a lot of people, I've gone around the world. I mean, I do things like sometimes I was out in Africa doing it for a blind mission, and they were trying to promote the mission, and they brought me into a radio station, and there's this young trendy girl there, and she said, "I'm sorry, I don't know your music," and I said, "That's fine." InALifetime is put on, and she looked at me and says, "This is you?" It's like, sometimes the name Clannad or InALifetime or Moya Brennan or whatever doesn't go hand in hand, but they know it because it's been played. And it is amazing that it's kind of got a timelessness to it, which is really great. I mean, that's really the gem of the song, really.
Moya, the word Macalla means echo.
Yeah.
What did that title represent for you and the band? Was it about reflection, connection, or something deeper?
It's really, I suppose, Macalla meaning, the echoes of what we grew up with, really, and what we wanted to represent. We also wanted to pick a name, and if you look at any of the Clannad albums, we pick names that people can find easy to pronounce. But this kind of really meant a lot because it meaning echo. It's kind of got a feeling that it's the echo of our lives, the echo of progression, the echo. You know what I mean? It just fitted right, and there wasn't a song on it called Macalla. So it was really just about the songs.
1985 felt like a turning point for Irish music. You had U2 at Live Aid, Irish artists stepping confidently onto the world stage. Did you feel part of that wider wave?
We did, actually, because you have to remember when we started off in 1970 singing Gaelic songs, basically, then doing our first album in 1973. I remember doing gigs in Ireland and people thought we were mad singing in Irish. Irish wasn't regarded as being anything special or, and people were coming up sort of saying, you have a great sound, but forget about the old Gaelic language, And we didn't. We didn't. We did 6 albums basically, or, 85% of it, if more, if not more, sometimes was in Irish because we're native speakers. It means a lot to us. So in 1985, I mean, it really kind of happened in 82 when we got Harry's Game. I mean, the fact that our first international hit was in Irish wasn't deliberate. That's the way it happened. And I think you have to remember that's the way things happen with Clannad a lot. Because if you really believe in what you do, if your soul is in it, if that's the main thing, that'll always come through. That'll always stick with you, I think. And the fact that Harry's Game was in Irish, there we were on Top of the Pops. Kind of all of a sudden, people that used to say to me in Dublin, don't talk to me in Irish if I meet you in Dublin, And this kind of had a different kind of thing altogether. All of a sudden, people were, it's okay. And so with the album Macalla, and then when we did Legend there, which is funny because there wasn't a Gaelic word on it, and people thought we sold out kind of thing. But how could you put Gaelic to an English folk hero? You know what I mean? We were just sticking to what kind of we thought we felt was kind of right. But with a couple of Gaelic songs on Macalla, it was true to form for us. We were starting to write, our own songs. It just felt the right way to do it. Harry's Game did open a lot of doors for us because all of a sudden, rather than looking for a record company in Ireland that would allow us to go in, we did our first record in 2 days. And that concluded mixing, I think. And our last record in Gaelic, the 6th album, was 10 days. And that's all we were able to get. And all of a sudden you had a record company knocking at your door. And that meant a big deal because then all of a sudden you had a chance to be seen on a wider scale. So it was a huge opportunity for us to be on that kind of stage. And Macalla, with the Bono track, obviously opened more doors for us because that was huge. The fact that it was a great song and the fact that it still is, it certainly changed the perception of maybe people thinking of Ireland with music. I remember, I think Bono said to me, he says, I got a phone call from Bruce Springsteen last night asking, what's going on over there? I just heard InALifetime. People were kind of maybe noticing a few more things was happening in Ireland. And, and there was.
And also almost seems too late to turn. It carries the reflective message about time and change, and it became the Children in Need single in 1985. So what does that song mean to you personally, and how did it feel to see it connect with such a huge audience through that chorus?
Well, yeah, that was really nice that they took that song especially, and you can interpret that song any way you want it. Really, it could be sad in love, it could be heartbroken, but it was lovely the way they did it with children that are neglected. And we still look at the world today and kind of reflect on how we look after kids. It's just so important. I mean, Children in Need's coming up soon again, and it's kind of it was really nice to be acknowledged in such a way, especially the UK sort of asking us to do a song for Children in Need. That was a big thing. But it was lovely that the song was used in such a sensitive way that maybe, you'd like to think that maybe it might have helped some people to understand something, maybe help people to be open about their situation or whatever. But, it's a difficult subject in a way.
And on this album, you worked with Steve Nye, known for his work with Japan, and David Sylvian.
Yeah.
So how did his production approach influence the atmosphere and the way your voice was captured?
It was lovely working with Steve Nye. Really, really nice. I think he really got into the spirit of the band, which is really great. And he knew the value of our culture and our sound. And, he very much worked on various things to bring that in. I mean, I know that the in a lifetime, the instrumental in the middle, it was him that kind of brought those kind of, what he did with the sound and what happened there. But he was always on top of things. But he was very, very good about talking to us about what we felt or what do you think or whatever. It wasn't just him producing it. It was very much shared, and he was easy to talk to. He was really, really nice, wonderful man to work with, very, very musical, which was really important because you can get some producers and, they're not so musical or they're not, in tune with what you do. And that was important that he was.
Were there any happy accidents during the making of Macalla, like a sound, a take, or a spontaneous moment that ended up shaping the record in ways that you didn't expect?
Well, I think the InALifetime track was very much, that kind of thing that just happened spontaneously. You know what I mean? Because things just, when you do something and just things start to fall into place. I think that doing Almost Seems Too Late to Turn, I remember when I went in to sing that, I was kind of brokenhearted a bit. And I think it was just 2 takes and I took it because, and I did it because I could feel the song, So there were lovely moments in there and just good crack as well because of Journey's End. We got a load of friends and, Paddy Ganol's friends and our friends and everything to sing along with the chorus. And we had it was near the end of finishing the album. And we needed to have a party.
Clannad's music often feels like a prayer, serene but powerful. Was that spirituality something you consciously brought into Macalla, or is it just simply part of who you are?
It's very much part of who we are. It's that earthiness that we've gained from where we come from. Because when people have asked me down through the years, where did this sound come from and that? And I've often said to them, go to Donegal, and you'll feel that because I think Donegal has this it's a fantastic place. Of course, I'm very biased, but it has an earthiness, an oldness. And I think that we carried this through. We always loved harmonies. We grew up our father opened the pub when the showband era stopped and all that. And he opened a pub in 1968. And all of a sudden, there was a stage for us to get on, to get on stage and perform. And it was really funny. We get on the stage and we'd do a Joni Mitchell song, a Beach Boys song, and then a Gaelic song. And we didn't see the difference. There was nothing, because we weren't writing any English songs. We had to rely on the Donovans and the Beatles and whatever to sing the English songs. But we had loads of Gaelic songs, but we couldn't get up at that time just sing Gaelic songs because, the local people were saying, oh, nobody wants to hear that, But it was very much part of our makeup because we loved singing it. We discovered that we loved harmonies, listened to the Beatles, listened to the Beach Boys, Mamas and the Papas. And those harmonies, were always great for us. And because we're a family, it just seemed to have blended in. And it became very natural, you know what I mean? And has a spirituality, but to me it's more, nature, it's more earthiness that we've carried from Donegal. And if it is spiritual and given that sort of feeling, then that's nice,
Yeah, you've carried this extraordinary voice for decades. When did you first realise that it wasn't just a sound, but something that could really move or heal people?
It took me ages to understand that I had a different voice. I always wanted a big voice. I would have given anything to be kind of, not an Aretha Franklin, but just to be able to sing those kind of songs or Billie Holiday, the jazz, or and I had what I thought was a puny voice, whatever. And it's when people started to say to me, I love your voice, I realized that it's my own timbre that carries it. And developing that, you can only develop that on stage, really, by doing live gigs and that. And you just kind of realize how you can sing, how you can project, because I'm not a big, I don't flash singing big songs and such. So yeah, it's kind of, but it probably comes from the traditional songs, I guess. Singing the traditional songs that my mother used to teach us, and we go in for faces and all that, and we'd hate it, or we just, But thank God they did it, because it's just like bringing us to piano lessons. I did it with my kids. I said, someday you'll thank me. And they do. And I thank my parents. So, but I think that, yeah, it took me a while to realize my voice, but it kind of blends with the boys as well, But now, now I love my voice. I still would have loved to be able to carry a real rock song or something, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah, you've kept the voice, sounding incredible after all these years. Do you have any rituals or routines that help protect it on tour or when you're in the studio?
Well, one of the things I have, when you hear about writers and people, wanting bottles of wine and vodka or whatever in their dressing room, I always have cider vinegar, apple cider vinegar with the mother, with that and lemon and ginger and things like that. I always make sure that I have, and I have it on stage as well. That kind of it kind of helps soothe my voice. But I do, you do a couple of breathing exercise before you go out on stage. But unfortunately, I don't know if you realize that I have a serious lung condition that I developed. Well, when I got it years ago, it was when you look at pulmonary fibrosis, it's scarring of the lungs. There's no cure for it. And they give you, if you look up Google, whatever, they give you 3 to 5 years. Well, I have it 8 years now, and my breathing has deteriorated. But it's amazing. I have my voice, because I think the muscles in my throat have been always me. But I just take more breaths, and nobody realizes that I have this. And it's one of the reasons that I've been able to keep going for as long, because I think you breathe differently rather than when you're talking. You breathe differently, and that's kind of helped my lungs a bit. But as I said, they have deteriorated a bit, and this is the first year I haven't put in any touring for myself as well. And there was a very good reason that we did. When we said it was the final Clannad tour, that was the reason. And in Leo's tomorrow night, it's where we started. My dad used to always get us up on stage and perform when we'd be home from our school holidays, and it's where we're going to finish. So I still do a couple of things that I can do, but unfortunately, I'll still keep going. I do a lot of, as I said, there's no cure for it. So I do a lot of alternative medicine and the likes. So that's some information as far as.
Sorry to hear that. Well, I hope you're not in pain.
No, I'm not in pain at all, actually, which is amazing. But I don't know if you realize I'm eating chewing gum, and that helps me keep my vocal cords kind of moist. And it stops me from coughing a bit. So excuse me for eating chewing gum in front of you.
Moya, you've worked with so many remarkable artists, from Robert Plant to Alan Simon. What moments outside of Clannad have stressed or surprised you the most as an artist? It's been brilliant. I have worked with amazing people like Paul Young. It was fantastic working with him. Michael Crawford, the likes of that. There is a lot. But I have to say, when you grew up in Donegal as a young girl, and never in my wildest dreams would I be sitting across, in a studio with Robert Plant. Led Zeppelin, come on, you know what I mean? And I'm sort of saying, he said, no. And maybe that's the time when I realized that I had kind of a different voice, when he said, no, I want you to do your thing or whatever. And it's lovely to think that the likes of him, although if you to look at Led Zeppelin, they kind of came from the folk end of things as well, didn't they? Yeah. But that'll always stay in my mind as being fascinating for me, I really was
awestruck in a way because, it's Led Zeppelin, it's Robert Plant. But like, I mean, I have to say now, having sung with Bono as well, that was like awesome as well. But I've enjoyed everybody that I've, participated with and sung with and doing the likes like Chicane, for instance, because when we did Harry's Game, we didn't do it with a click track. So nobody could put it with kind of music as such or, remaster it or what am I trying to say? To remix it. So I, with Nick Bracegirdle from Chicane, I actually went to a studio by myself and I recorded all the voices on the track that you hear that Chicane uses. They're all my voices, my own voices, because I have a very deep voice and a very high voice. And so I enjoyed doing that. It was really good. But, and it was nice working with him as well. So, and I've, written songs with Schiller, a very much a keyboard orientated, amazing. I've toured with him as well. And that was great. I've worked with some DJs in Holland and Germany and that. And I think it's great fun working with people. And I think it opens your mind a lot and, makes you think about how, the different branches. Because I always think of Clannad as, this old oak tree. And with the first 6 albums, we created that, with lots of, the roots of our where we came from. And then we just added branches. And I think that that's really important because you always have the main tree. And that's where I saw my music, Clannad's music and the likes. So that's why I said yes to a lot of things when people ask me to do something. And I just think it's fun to do.
Yeah, I loved Saltwater. I loved how it took off around the world. It introduced your voice to a whole new generation on dance floors instead of folk stages.
I know.
It must have been amazing seeing your voice, travel that far in such a modern form.
I know, yeah. And, I was in holidays in Greece or something, a couple of years ago. And, in a restaurant and the DJ was playing it. And it was really funny, I think my husband went over and kind of said to him, who I was sitting over there, and he was flabbergasted, it is, you hear it everywhere.
Moya, you're often described as the first lady of Celtic music, a title that's followed you around for decades.
Yeah.
When you hear that now, what does it mean to you?
Well, I think how that happened was I was the kind of one of the first to now there was a couple of other singers way, way back. Margaret Barry, I think, went to America and that, and there were some singers that went to England. But I was kind of the first singer going to Europe. There was all band like the Chieftains, the Dubliners, the Botti. Well, no, the Botti band came afterwards. But it was all male orientated. And I remember going on the first German tour, and the Fury brothers were there, and the father was there, and he took one look at me and he says, "Oh, no girls on tour, Now, we became great friends by the end of the tour. But it was the first time that I suppose with Clannad and that I went out there especially singing the Gaelic songs. So that's probably how I got the name. And it's always stuck with me. And I like it. It's good. It's good.
And you've influenced artists like Hozier, Saint Sister, and even ambient producers, often cite Clannad as a foundation.
Yeah.
When you hear that, what goes through your head? How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm really flabbergasted. I'm always thrilled to hear when people say that, that Clannad were their basis to hear something, or that they're, with the sound that we had or with the Gaelic or whatever. It's lovely. It really is so lovely. And it's particularly lovely for the simple reason that it's something we stuck with. We kind of always believed in ourselves, no matter how we moved, and we worked with different producers. We tried different things. It's always good to try things. Sometimes it mightn't work. But for us, I think 80% of the time it worked. when we wanted to develop. We didn't kind of stay in the same place all the time. So for people to say that they are, they admire what we did and looked at, Andrea Core is a really good friend of mine, and the Cores were listening to Clannad and loved what we were doing. I mean, it's always lovely to hear that.
If someone was discovering Clannad for the first time, maybe they've just heard Macalla, which 5 songs would you point them toward to truly understand who you were or who you are as a band?
Well, definitely Castanor, because that's kind of bringing you into our realm right away. And that was really important at the beginning of the they were albums then. So side 1 was number 1, and I think that was important. InALifetime because of Bono. Bohol and Ernia would be up there as well. We've always included it on our tours because it's a beautiful air, it's a beautiful song. I love the sentiment of it, and it brings you into the Bohol and Ernia always gives you the grassroots of this is where we came from. And then you put on Almost Seems Too Late to Turn. And it still has for me the vibe, but you know what I mean? It's maybe a bit more modern than that. And just trying to think, Journey's End. I think that, if you were to listen to those tracks, you'd get the gist of Clannad in those 5 songs.
If you could relive one musical moment from your career so far, what would that be?
Gosh, there's been so many. In 1970, when the local sergeant came in with an entry form for us to go in for the Letterkenny Folk Festival. And we thought, there's no way we'd be good enough for that. And I'll always, always remember the feeling I had in my stomach when we won it. It was amazing. It really was amazing. I always go back to that because it was just, we were there singing a Gaelic song, playing a tune on a harp, and then singing an English song that didn't really suit us, but we didn't have any English song. We got somebody else helped us with it. But, but the fact that was our core, we had that initially from the word go, that kind of feeling of like harp music, the harmonies, the Gaelic, you know what I mean? And to win it, like it was kind of very unusual to win something like that, singing Gaelic songs then. And it'll always be a highlight for me. But there's so many other highlights. Winning a Grammy, I mean, come on, being nominated several times as a solo artist as well. Winning a Grammy is amazing. Won a Ivor Novello Award, winning a BAFTA Award for Robin of Sherwood. And I mean, there's great, great moments that you never in your wildest dreams when that night in Letterkenny that you would have seen what was coming. You know what I mean? It's been amazing. And then, that special concert we had in the Royal Albert Hall this time last year, we played there. And it was to celebrate the legend music. So the first half was all Robin of Sherwood music. And we had Michael Praed, Jason Connery, Clyde, the Little John and Maid Marian, and they all came. But Jason and Michael introduced us. And Michael looked at me, he says, I've never been treated like a rock star before. Like the place went bananas when they saw the 2 boys coming out, introducing us. And that was a really special, because, when you do concerts, and there's always, you go backstage afterwards and you kind of go, I wish I did this better, or, we did that too fast, or, there's always that gig as a whole. It was just one of those gigs that everything just went perfectly and we couldn't believe it. It was just so enjoyable. And when the people were leaving at the end, we normally, you put on something that you really like, or that, that means something to you. We put on My Father singing The Homes of Donegal. And loads of people just stood there and didn't leave the auditorium for all the verses he sang, The Homes of Donegal recording he had. And, and so, Daddy, you played the Royal Albert Hall, It was just a moment that was captured totally in time, and it was really, really special. It's a special night, that.
Finally, Moya, Macalla means echo, as we said, and 40 years later, its voice still carries. What do you hope people hear when they press play now?
Well, what do you hear when you put an album on? I'd like to think that it's something that they can make them feel good in this world that we live in. Music is important to us all. It's so vital for every walk of life. It's really, the arts itself is important, and music really helps people through things. And, if it is something that it gives people a moment to cherish something or to remember something by, or, can feel something and can feel where it comes from, because it did come from in here when from how we carried our music and everything. So it comes from the soul, and I'd like to think that maybe they can feel that.
Great. That's a perfect way to end it. Thank you very much, Moya.
Thank you.